He had his gun, so he just swung it open.
I start to notice that, the atmosphere feels a little bit weird.
First thing he seen was this 6.5 foot tall, broad shoulder, dark hair. That freaked him out.
We hadn't talked to her about like life and death and what any of that means. She's 3 years old,
So we turned around. Suddenly there's a whole tree falling across the road.
And she was describing to us that, there was a deceased person that she could see visually.
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, where we tackle the ever-expanding history and mystery of monsters and supernatural madness every Monday and Friday. You can find us at CryptidClues.ca for more information, or even check out exclusive content such as interviews and D&D campaigns at patreon.com/CryptidClues.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Cryptid Clues, Campfire Clues. I am your host, Taylor, and today we're going to be taking another look into Sasquatch. But before we get into that, a couple of plugs. You can find us on our website, CryptidClues.ca, our social media channels, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook, and our Patreon, where you can get those ad-free early episodes. Additionally, if you want to reach out to us directly, you can send us an email, cryptidclues@gmail.com. I also highly recommend, if you haven't yet, the full episode 1 and the episode 2 preview available on our live feeds of the Haunt of the Grassman. This is our D&D style campaign that Ruben is working and constructing on. Part 3 is in the works and will be dropping on our Patreon along with other episodes moving forward. It's definitely a very, very good time. And additionally, while we were on this topic of Bigfoot, our Monday episode is going to be focused on the Sasquatch smells. So definitely tune into that. Me and Ruben kind of take a little bit of an explorative dive into why they smell the way they do, whether it is just their environment or if there are other significant components attached to it. Very interesting topic. And stay tuned as well for the next Monday, because those smells and just kind of like where we lead into that conversation has not a strong tie-in, but a very minute possible association to the next episode following Monday. So definitely stay tuned. Keep your eyes on those feeds because we got some good content coming out. But in regards to today's content, let's get into this. So I'm going to be quoting here a first encounter, and this is from an individual that I won't name their username or anything like that, but their story is available on Reddit, and should anyone request the link, I can definitely send it to them. But this is basically their experience that took place in the early 90s, and they were around 10 years old, and I quote, "My father bought several hundred acres near Lucedale," sorry, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Mississippi, about an hour from Mobile, Alabama, where we lived. In the late 80s, the nearest paved road from the start of our land was at least a 20-minute drive, so it was pretty secluded. The nearest neighbor was an old couple in their 70s about 5 miles west of our land. Shortly after purchasing the land, my dad built a small lake about a quarter-mile north of our cabin, which he also built. Aside from the clearing the cabin was on and the lake, the land was covered in thick woods. There was a dirt road that ran from the cabin and past the west side of the lake. You could also get to the lake by a walking trail, which ended at the southeast corner of the lake, where a fishing pier was located. The lake itself was surrounded by woods, and there was a dam on the north end. One October morning, I decided not to go with my parents and little sister into town. I instead wanted to go fishing. While listening to the Bama game on the radio, I had my loyal and unusually large Airedale Terrier with me, and I had been fishing on the little pier for about 15 minutes. When I started feeling very nervous for whatever reason. The hair on my neck was standing, and I started getting nauseous. I scanned the tree line on the west side across from me and spotted a silhouette in the trees. The lake itself was roughly the size of a football field, so it wasn't that far across, maybe 50-70 meters. I thought my eyes were deceiving me, and then the silhouette moved. I was absolutely scared stiff, but was able to keep calm. I could tell that whatever it was, the color was uniform, dark brown or black, and it was very tall. I casually faced north, but kept my eyes glued to the figure. It slowly moved from tree to tree, always facing me. It was making its way toward me. My dog started to low growl, and that broke my paralysis. I set my pole down and started walking up the pier to the trail. I didn't want to look over my shoulder for whatever reason, and when I got to the trail, I ran as fast as my legs could carry me back to the cabin. My dog stayed with me the entire time. I don't know if it followed. When I got to the cabin, I got my dad's shotgun and waited by the biggest window, eyes glued to the woods. My family returned home and I didn't tell them. I was afraid they may restrict my explorations, but it didn't matter because I never felt comfortable there again. We sold the land in the late 90s and got a beach house in Gulf Shores. I didn't mind. End quote. First off, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to share this. Secondly, there's so many things about this that to me are prominently reoccurring components to Bigfoot encounters. When you look at other different situations and how this thing was moving tree to tree, that's a notable one there. Always fixated and focused on what it's looking at too. That's another thing there. And that's something you can even kind of, again, the Patty footage. Obviously, she's definitely not really going tree to tree, but she's trying to get into a tree line, and her focus is very much fixated on the people filming and kind of approaching her. She's still moving, and she's turning her head, but she's still fixated enough as she's walking away. In this case, it's moving side to side, and it's definitely able to keep its gaze on the individual here when he's out on the stalk. But still, all the signs there. And the pre-existing fear component before you I shouldn't say lock eyes, but you catch its attention. You lock on to this thing, this animate object out there. So the fear. This is something, again, that me and Ruben will be discussing about in our Sasquatch Smells episode. And now I can't say that it's infrasound because of the experience. It sounds like, okay, he felt tense, felt, something was happening, something was watching him, scared, panicked, and then all of a sudden there it is in the distance. So what really would have been that prompt? And then this is also my kind of segue into like, hey, maybe it is that sixth sense that people get, because there are studies where if you go to a mall, if you go out into a public setting and you stare at someone, eventually that person, I don't say eventually like loosely, like I mean like pretty quickly, like that person will be able to feel that and will look into the direction that you are being stared into. I don't mean the fact that, hey, yeah, just over time, maybe they give it like, yeah, half an hour, 3 hours, this person will eventually look up and lock eyes with you. No, it's pretty quick. And if my memory serves me correctly, because I think they gave us a brief lesson in this in school when we were learning about marketing and design and just the eyes and what catches attention and such and how it's receptive. But anyways, I digress. When you have the eyes fixated on something, and it can almost send out these vibrations where the other person, you can feel that. So it's almost like you are being touched on the shoulder or an equivalent of that. And it's just someone's eyes looking at you. So when you have a larger predator out in the distance and they're looking at you, you get that sense. It's a survival instinct. It's almost when too, if you want to equate this for simpler terms, deer, prey, being out there, and I hate to say like humans are prey, but we are for the most part in the animal kingdom. They can just kind of click, like, yes, they have very attuned senses to their environment, but when something is in the distance and they can kind of feel it, they don't take no chances and they get the heck out of there. And the fight or flight response, you could say, and humans, I believe, have this as well. So at the end of the day, this thing trying to get closer to him it's terrifying, and he did the right thing. Having the dog was perfect, and I bet you that's one of the deterrents that this thing had. This thing probably would have been a lot closer if the dog was not there, and that leads into one of the questions an individual asked. Sounds like your dog had your back. And have you ever asked your family members if they ever had experiences there? And the answer was, I asked my parents. Dad said no, but the mom said she felt unusually paranoid a few times, but never saw anything. Now, this thing was comfortable enough to get close. Not close enough because the dog was there, but it was comfortable enough to at least make itself be seen. Maybe it thought it was a little bit more hidden, but him being very calm and moving away out of sight very slowly was good. I mean, that's something you'd want to do with any larger predatory animal, like a bear. You don't want to run. But when you get out of sight and you're far away from it, then yeah, you get the heck out of there. And I'm glad that this person did get to the cabin, get a weapon. And yes, while some people may say like, oh, you know, a kid's not going to do anything or not going to be able to shoot off a gun and hurt a Sasquatch, it's not even about that. It's about having that gun. It will reassure you, and it will scare the shit out of that Bigfoot. The Bigfoot won't necessarily know if there's more people in that cabin. And if you fire off a shot, it's going to definitely deter it. Because to me, Bigfoot, they know about guns. They don't like guns. And even if a gun doesn't do much to hurt them, I mean, they're not going to want to get shot. It's kind of like a person, like you get a paper cut. It's not going to do much to hurt you, but it's like, oh, really? I got a paper cut. Oh, God. Okay, let's go. We got to go tend to this. That's kind of what the situation would be like. So... yeah, I think it's fascinating. I'm glad that it didn't come to the situation where he had to fire off shots out the window or something like that, being fixated on the woods and tree line by looking out the window. Because these things do like to look out windows. That's definitely a consistent thing. Their curiosity can get the better of them. But in this case, it definitely chose not to follow all the way to the cabin, but probably was well aware of them staying in the cabin at this time. So... yeah, that is a first encounter there. Thank you so much for allowing me to share it again. We're going to go into our next encounter here. So this encounter is very, very exciting. Finding things that are locally based, extremely locally based, it is tricky. Feels like when Sasquatch things occur, you're usually hearing about them more north, more south, definitely more west in British Columbia. You never hear them happening in the central Okanagan. So when something does happen, which the rare occasion it has, it becomes very, very interesting. But for the most part, everyone's like, oh, Ogopogo this, Ogopogo that. And don't get me wrong, Ogopogo is a fascinating topic to dive into. We've done a few episodes on it. But Sasquatch in the Okanagan is very, very interesting. And we do have some dedicated Sasquatch groups here. And they're groups that I want to reach out to and just talk to some of these individuals. Because there are things happening here, but it's not as frequently reported and recorded. There was a sighting that happened last year. And I reached out to the individual. They said, no, sorry, like the story was passed on to someone else. You can talk to them about it. So I reached out to that person, and they had passed it on to the Sasquatch group, the local research group that handles these things. And I wasn't able to get any further than that, but it was deemed to be a hoax. They were just large footprints found in the snow, garbage rummaged through and everything like that. I did go to the area. I didn't go to the guy's proper yard and just snoop around, like looking at the garbage or anything, but I went to the forested areas surrounding like this little property that he had. It was, again, very like a developed area, like just a house, little backyard, that kind of thing. But there was lots of forested pathways and everything. So I just went out for like a little hike back there and just wanted to kind of get the lay of the land. It was a great day, great hike, but yeah, again, it was a hoax. So obviously I didn't see anything to report. But that's not the case that I'm getting into. The case I wanted to get into was that someone had shared these documents. The absolute kicker that I love is that these documents are official police documents. Now, this was when they were a member of the RCMP in the Okanagan, and this person was debating whether or not to share these documents, and they thought that, okay, they were not theirs to share, but they decided that, okay, this is far too interesting to keep to themselves, and wanted to share them. Now, they don't share an actual blood relation to this relative, but this person was from an uncle that was 70 plus, had never met him, but yeah, so all he knew of him was that he had an obsession with Sasquatch. He would show books of just many clippings of newspapers, magazines, all these different things that were collected over the year. But what was most interesting, again, were these police documents. So this is probably one of the things that triggered his obsession. And he was basically given the book about 15 years ago, and then this is what kind of triggered his own obsession with Bigfoot. And this is one of the most prized possessions that he has, and as he puts it, he has to admit he doesn't know much else about these documents, but they are 100% legit. And I took the liberty of reaching out to some people I know in the RCMP and sharing the documents with them. And it's like, oh, what are your thoughts on here? And it's like, oh, you know, and I'm paraphrasing here, of course, but it was definitely accepted as being absolutely authentic. And that even gets me more excited because these documents are done back in the day when they were using typewriters. They didn't have the computer printers that we do today to do off their documents, and that Microsoft Word, which is a great program. But I digress. So let's get into our first one here, and I'm gonna read these forms in order of posting. And again, I've read them a few times, but some of the words are a little bit tricky to read. But so this is a occurrence report, time 8:30 a.m., date December 1st, 1976. And yes, detachment Kelowna, and the location was Dilworth Mountain of the occurrence. And it goes as follows. AN advises that Vincent and Mark Campbell, 13 years and 11 years, respectively, along with two other youths, aged 13 and 9 years, were hiking on Dilworth Mountain on the 11th of November 1976, and around 11 a.m. observed what they described as two big monkeys on the mountaintop. Both were a grayish color and had long hair, and the boys observed them for approximately a half hour, from approximately 400 yards, and later became scared and ran back down and reported same to their mother. One of these creatures was standing and one was sitting, and the youth also observed them running, stating they ran like monkeys. As a result, the comp attended on Dilworth Mountain on the 14th November 76 at approximately 10 a.m. with the boys and was shown the area where the creatures seen. Comp found an area where there was a lot of hair scattered around on the rocks on a steep mountainside, and states that there is no way in his mind that a cow or horse could have walked on this terrain. Comp obtained a sample of this hair and has turned same over to this member for forwarding for analysis to CDL Vancouver. He states the boys told him the creatures had long grayish hair all over their body and ran on 2 feet with their arms hanging down. Blank feels the youths are telling the truth as they fear going on the mountain, and all of their stories coincide, and that the fact that hair was found leads him to believe they did see something unknown. In view of the above, Corporal Brent Vladicum, Hair and Fiber Section CDL VCR contacted and states that they have in fact gotten similar described hair forwarded to the lab, which they are unable to find a standard for, and it has virtually turned out to be unknown. He requests that the same be forwarded as there is an interest in this field shared by their section, and states the OIC CDL inspector has done a lot of research into this field. Comp advised sample to be forwarded to CDL. That is our first document. That is the one that basically encompasses the sighting. And it has some more information, or it is forwarded to crime, has concluded here. And so now moving on to the next document. This is a detachment investigation report. And what I'll be explaining here is kind of more like the science experiment of the hair follicles and just kind of what they could deduce from it. And while I'm definitely not an expert on hair, this should be mostly clear for anyone out there who's curious enough, but I digress. So basically, on this date, he's advised that the hair forwarded to him is definitely hair, as when it was burned, it contained the smell of protein. He has ruled it out as being a cow tail and feels it is not a horse tail. He also states it appears to be or is the same scale as human hair. However, it is very unlikely that it is human hair. H does state that it is definitely from the primate family, which includes humans, but also includes monkeys, apes, gorillas, etc. In the past, most samples have been attributed to bear hair. However, in this case, it cannot. He states his tests indicate only one type of scales, which are common only to the primate family. Blank, very interested in this matter, and requests Comp's name and phone number so he can call him directly for further details as to terrain. Same given to him. He also advises that Blank, the Sasquatch hunter, who renowned his very interest, and this appears to be the best evidence so far regarding these creatures. Blank has been invited to a conference at UBC in May 77 regarding Sasquatches, and there will be people attending from Moscow, England, etc. In any event, it looks like that this comp may be of some value. Blank will advise further when his tests are completed. In the meantime, he wants Blank contacted to see if he can obtain more hair. Blank contacted and will go back up this weekend, as he is the only one at this time who knows where the hair located, and he wants to keep this low key, which I assume he will. And then it says concluded here at the end. This just is crazy. Again, it's police documentation. This is a government stamped document that is talking about, hey, we have hair, we have something that is related to humans, related to the primate family. It's not horse, it's not cow, and there's something going on here, and we need more of it. It gets me so excited. Now, the kicker too is that could this be just a couple of monkeys let loose out there on Dilworth Mountain? Oh, absolutely. I've never heard of that case out in the public, but everyone that's involved with this seems to be kind of gauging towards Sasquatch. Now they're saying like, hey, go towards this Sasquatch convention here, where you're going to be having people from Moscow and England and everyone from around the world and other countries attending. And I feel like we don't really get this kind of thing anymore. Well, I personally have been to a very, very small conference. It was a gentleman on Vancouver Island that was sharing his encounters out in the beyond Mount Benson on Vancouver Island, and following these things out in the snow. That's the limit of it. But for me, but in present day, you have like celebrations and festivals, and you do have the odd conference, but it's not as prominent anymore, in my opinion. And that's just me doing my own kind of exploration, like where's the next conference closest to me? And maybe that's why I stand where I stand, because maybe there's a lot of them that just aren't close to me. However, I digress. Back to this document though, it's just incredible. It blows my mind, and the science that is attached to it, that's a huge kicker. So we have two components. We have science backing it up, not really saying it's a Sasquatch confirmed, because we have to have that Sasquatch DNA body just to match it to confirm it. But we have science saying, hey, this is not these things, and we can't properly figure out what it is. And then we have the police that are now leaning into like, hey, Sasquatch, but it's all come down to, hey, we need more hair. So there's one final document here, and it's labeled one plastic bag containing sample of hair of unknown origin. The AN sample of hair was received from Mr. Blank of Kelowna, who found the same on the 14th of November 76 on Dilworth Mountain in Kelowna. Blank advises that 4 youths ranging in age from 9 years to 13 years have been hiking on Dilworth Mountain on the 11th of November 1976 at approximately 11 a.m. when they observed what they described as two giant monkeys on the mountain. One was sitting on a stump and the other was standing, and both had long grayish hair all over their body. They observed them for approximately 1/2 hour from a distance of 400 yards with field glasses. At this point, the youths departed in a hurry, becoming frightened. As they told their mother, who advised Blank subsequently was shown the area where these creatures were observed on the 14th of November 1976 and scoured the area to find a sample of the foregoing hair. Blank states this area is very rocky and steep and is near the mountaintop, and feels there is no way that a horse or cow could have gotten into the area. He states there was a lot of hair remaining on the ground where he picked up the sample. However, he was unable to find any sign of flesh or other unknown matter in the area. The ground was also dry and hard. It is therefore requested that the foregoing sample be analyzed to determine whether it in fact belongs to a known hair standard, or if same is in fact from an unknown source for which there is no standard. At this time, the youths involved appear to be convinced that they did in fact see something unknown to them. And then we got several stamps and signatures all over here and all that fun stuff. I blanked out obviously certain names, so I just want to respect privacy. However, at the end of the day, we have 3 police documents. One more scientifically, and 2 more focused on the police's accounts of these witnesses. So, what do you take away from this? Like I said before, just the evidence that amounted to this and the scientific components, it is boggling. It really, really is. Where did all this go? I've not that I've snooped around, but I've tried to poke around. It's like, hey, is there any kind of Sasquatch, Bigfoot stuff, unknown weird things of any sort appearing, you know, with the RCMP. Do you ever notice anything out there? And well, the answers definitely always go like, nope, haven't noticed anything. I mean, obviously they can't say anything, even if I was friends, but I do think that there are a lot of things going on, and they just lock these documents up. They keep them tucked away. There was one case that I looked into, oh gosh, it was ages ago, but it was just basically related to the police, and they were aware of these things going on. They had a small little section for just recording these things, and yeah, it's just, I think that this is a more prominent thing across the world than what people really realize. And to have this little thing literally so close to home like this blows my mind, because these things just, they don't really happen in Kelowna. It's Ogopogo this, Ogopogo that. But to have not only one, but two possible Sasquatch sightings right here, like Dilworth Mountain, I can tell you, is completely developed now. So whatever happened to their home is probably long gone. They probably retreated back into the deep wood, and the hair samples that were taken have probably been locked away in some government laboratory, because everything about this just screams credibility to me, and that's not what the government wants to bestow on anyone looking into this. But yeah, that is it. I hope you really enjoyed these discussions that we had here today about the encounter on the dock with the individual and their dog, and then getting into the documentation here from the RCMP. So thank you again. That is all I have for this episode. So we'll be back on Monday with our mainline news episode, and again that following Friday and the next Monday, and all so forth. However, until then, you can find us on our website, CryptidClues.ca, our social media channels, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook, and you can go on our Patreon. We add free early episodes there, and you can also reach us directly, CryptidClues@gmail.com. So until next time, everyone, take care and stay safe.